Hello, welcome once again to Lato's Law. I'm Steve Lato. Today we're going to talk about what happens when the homeowners association hates your truck. I've had a lot of people ask me to speak about homeowners associations. I've had some experience with them. I lived in a condominium for a while where I was actually on the condo board. I was one of the people charged with enforcing the rules and understanding the rules and talking to people who didn't follow the rules. And I learned to hate it. And I later came to believe that owning and living in a condominium was the worst of both worlds. You paid rent and had neighbors like an apartment. But it cost the same as a real estate, like a house. So, to each his own, but I didn't care for it. But the point is that if you buy a piece of property and there's a homeowners association, and you'll often know this because if nothing else at the closing, it's often included in the title work. And it'll actually say, this piece of property, whatever it is, comes with a set of rules that come along that you've got to follow when you get this property. And there are often problems where people rent, where someone rents like a condo or rents in a place where there's a homeowner association and the renter doesn't care. Renter's like, who cares, And we had that problem at the condominiums that I lived in. But I can tell you right now that the situation here is a battle between a homeowner and a homeowners association over a truck in Chesterfield, Missouri. And this is the kind of story that really makes you wonder if you're a car guy. Andy Lipka loves his classic cars. And his latest obsession is a 1965 Ford F-250 pickup truck. I'm going to put a link in the description below. You can actually watch a little clip of the truck and see what we're talking about here. The truck runs well, and Lipka says, hey, truck's perfect as it is. It says it reminds him of the truck he grew up in with his dad. And not only does he like the way it drives, he likes the paint job. As he describes it, it's not damaged. It's the way the finish has evolved over the years. And I'm sure you know this, but you can buy a brand new car with a brand new paint job, wash it, wax it, and cover it, and keep it stored indoors. And years later, that paint job can look just like it did when it rolled off the factory floor, right? But cars that are outside, especially trucks, they get weathered, they develop what we call patina. If you watch Antiques Roadshow or American Pickers, you know that patina is something that it's a nice word for something that's looking a little aged. So his truck has got some patina on it. The problem is his homeowners association hates the truck. So much so they filed a lawsuit against him over it. The bylaws of the HOA in his neighborhood state, vehicles with moderately severe body damage can't be parked in the driveway. Lipka says his truck does not have body damage. Now, here's the funny thing. Now, I'm just the attorney here. I'm thinking out loud for you. If you can put the truck in the garage, just put it in the garage. It solves the problem, assuming you have a garage and you've got room in the garage. But I know what you're saying. You're saying, Steve, but on principle, isn't he right? Well, here's the thing. If the actual rule says moderately severe body damage, okay, not just body damage, not severe body damage, moderately severe body damage. So the question then becomes, what is the aged paint, the patinaed paint? What is that? Is that body damage? And I think it's a strong argument that it's not damage. It's certainly something that a court, unfortunately, will have to straighten out, because unless they've defined it in the rules, and a lot of rules won't have definitions in them, it's up to the board first. And then if the homeowner doesn't agree with them, then unfortunately it goes to court. Lipka told a local TV station, this is the original Ford paint from 1965, and it's actually sought after now, okay? Now, in the car world, he says it's known as a patina finish. Car experts do admit it's a rising trend. It's very popular. And, this is the thing. You see these barn find shows. My good buddy Ryan Brute, the automotive archaeologist, hey Ryan, does a thing where he goes out and he hunts down stories of cars and barns, and he finds them and photographs them. And the great thing about some of these cars is that some of them weren't stored in a perfect environment, but they're still in good shape. But the years have added there's something attractive about a car covered in dust that hasn't been seen by people in decades, okay? And we've seen a few vehicles that were just trashed. Somebody pulled a Dodge Charger Daytona, like one of these out of storage, not a storage shed, but a carport down south and had like moss hanging off of it and stuff. That one was in bad shape, but just a little bit of patina can look good. So Noah Alexander owns a classic car studio in St. Louis and is also the face of a nationwide show shot from his shop called Speed is the New Black. Alexander says some clients come in and request him to actually make their cars look like this truck. They want that patina look. He says, I think it's very popular now and becoming even more popular. But in Lipka's case, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And this is the Woodfield Homes Association in Chesterfield. He parks his truck in his driveway because his garage houses 2 other vehicles. And he's been assessed nearly $3,000 in penalties and fines and is now facing a very serious threat because they are trying to foreclose on his house because he hasn't paid his fines. And this is the problem that we ran into at the condo association that I was on the board of. And people would get the notices from us that said, something you're doing is against the rules and regulations. Stop. And they wouldn't stop. And we'd send them a warning letter. They wouldn't stop. And then we'd have a lawyer send them a letter. They wouldn't stop. We then tell them we're going to fine you. They don't care. So then we fine them, but they don't pay it. And the thing about it is that the rules that you agreed to when you bought the house or the condo state right in there that we got these rules, and if you don't follow them, this is what will happen to you. Now, I'm talking about the people in the condo association who are clearly breaking laws and rules that were on the books. Everyone agreed except for the one idiot who you find out later, oh, this is a renter. And we're sending the notices to the owner, and the owner goes, I talked to the renter, they said they're going to stop. And the renter's not stopping. So I'd get more into that, but it would be way off topic. So Lipka hasn't paid the fines. So the homeowners association is seeking to foreclose on his house. So Lipka has filed a countersuit. So now it comes down to, most likely, a judge who's going to look at that truck and then look at the rule that says moderately severe body damage. Because that's the question. Yes or no? Is it moderately severe body damage? If yes, he loses. If no, he wins. So he said he understands the benefits of a homeowners association and rules that prohibit parking cars with flat tires or inoperable cars, but he feels this one's gone too far. And this is the thing. I mentioned a couple days ago, I had a Deuce and a Half Army truck that was 4-color camo. And I knew that some neighbors didn't like it, so whenever I was not going to be using it that day, I'd try to put it in the garage and put it away. But there was no law against me parking it outside, and by the way, it was a fully functional truck with a plate on it and a registration. So, I wasn't breaking the law, but I was just simply trying to just make sure that I'm the good neighbor, right? But the point is that, someone interpreting these rules thinks this is a problem. Missouri State Representative Brian Spencer represents rapidly growing Wentzville, where new neighborhoods and new HOAs are sprouting up. Spencer says he goes to 60 to 80 HOA meetings a year because they are his number one district concern. And like I said, I get a lot of calls from people who say, Steve, can the homeowners association do this or do that, or what are they allowed to do? And I always say, go find the rules and regulations, because you should have got a copy when you bought your property. And if you didn't, go get one, okay? And I've been 2 or 3 places that had them where I actually had to be aware of them. And you go get a copy, and trust me, if you want a copy, they'll give them to you. They want you to have the rules. But I've had people say, well, these rules are not fair. The rules were there when you moved in. Okay, this is kind of like the person who buys the house next to the farm and then complains in the spring about the fact they're farming next door. You bought this piece of property with the homeowners association rule booklet, okay? You should have read it, you should have studied it, and you should have asked yourself, does this apply to me? I'm speaking in generalities here. I personally agree with the man with the truck. I think his truck is fine. If he was my neighbor, I'd help him fight this. Problem is, I'm not in his state. He's not in my state. But the point is, generally speaking, under contract law in most states, if you enter into a contract and you're an adult and you weren't tricked into it, and you agreed to the terms, you can be held to those terms. And homeowners associations in general have had their rules and regulations upheld by courts because courts say, look, if you didn't want to live by these rules and regulations, you shouldn't have bought the house. And by the way, some people consider the HOA to be a valuable thing. It might actually increase the value of some homes, especially if the HOA makes the neighborhood look nicer, or if it's got common elements that are kept, things of that nature. So courts aren't going to agree with you when you say, hey, this HOA group, they're pushing people around. They're acting like little Nazis or little Hitlers or whatever. No, if the rules are on paper and they're enforcing those rules, the court might back them up. Now, with respect to this man's car or his truck, like I said, I agree with him. I don't believe that faded paint is body damage. Okay, and it's sad because this is going to boil down to what judge you get or what jury hears the case. But I believe that you're going to be able to make a good argument that damage sounds like the result of something, okay? Something, I punched something, I damage it. I ran my car into something, there's damage that occurs. And the idea that something just sits there in its natural state, I don't think you'd consider that damaged. But people can argue about less. Now I'm back again to the politician who says he's tried to introduce legislation that would curb HOA power in Missouri, but the plan fell apart in the Capitol. He goes, I've worked on legislation, a homeowner's Bill of Rights, which has gone nowhere because of lobbyist efforts. It would let you make decisions about your property that you bought, give property rights to the owners. Well, the problem, of course, is that somebody develops a neighborhood and they start putting in houses, and each of these people agrees to the homeowners association, and one person comes in and starts breaking the rules. And I'm not talking about the guy with the truck. I like the guy with the truck. It's just, so you can understand why it's not lobbyists so much. It's just people saying, hey, look, the homeowners associations actually exist for a reason, okay? News 4, that's the TV station, reached out to the president of Lipka's HOA but did not hear back. An attorney for the HOA stated, the association is asking the court to enforce its covenants, which Lipka agreed to follow and was aware of prior to purchasing his home. Well, yeah, that's assuming that you like the interpretation of those covenants, meaning that faded paint equals body damage. Lipka says he's not aware of any covenant that prevents the truck from being parked on his property, but the attorney says Mr. Lipka is not being singled out, and the association and neighbors made numerous attempts to reach a resolution. Lipka, of course, is a combat veteran, says this is a battle unlike any he's fought before. They say combat creates clarity. This is different because there's no clarity here. If a judge decides in Lipka's favor, the fines and associated threat of foreclosure will go away. But of course, I'm guessing this is costing him some money to pay for an attorney. According to the Community Association Institute in Missouri, there are more than a million people living under the rules and regs of an HOA. In Illinois, there are 3.75 million people living in neighborhoods governed by HOAs. I've actually heard somebody who hosted a talk show, and the talk show was entirely all about HOAs and condominiums. And I actually listened to it for a while because I'm like, how can they spin an entire show about that on a regular basis? But they took phone calls. And the phone calls were almost entirely about one of two things. I'm in this HOA and they're harassing me about such and such. Or I'm in this HOA and my neighbor is doing such and such. And what's interesting is quite often someone will complain about their neighbor about something that's not covered by the bylaws. Or they'll complain about the neighbor about something that is covered by the bylaws, but they'll find out that their neighbor is friends with the people on the board. And so they won't enforce the rules. So it can be a mess. And a recent theme in my life, often when I'm talking to people, I find myself saying this one phrase or one concept. And a lot of times when you're entering into a transaction, buying a car, buying a house, or thinking about where to go to live, ask yourself about anything that adds complication to it, okay? Complication is good in a watch, but complication is not good elsewhere. You want to remove complication. So if you're buying a house, the HOA is another level of complication. Did you want more complication in your life or not? So, yeah, you're looking at the house. The house looks nice, okay? But it comes with an HOA. And you might want to say, I'd like to read those rules first and see if I want to live under those rules. Because you might be able to find just as nice a house someplace else without the HOA. And I know people who are so in love with something, they're looking at a house, they find the house, it's the dream house, they want to buy the house. And to them, the HOA is an afterthought. It's like, will that really come back to haunt us? Well, like I said, you might want to talk to Andy Lipka of Chesterfield, Missouri. I said that right. And him and his classic 1965 Ford F-250 pickup truck with the beautiful patina. Like I said, I feel sorry. If he was in Michigan, I'd represent him gladly. But unfortunately, he's not. So that's the story. I will follow that story as it unfolds. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.